"You know this house isn't yours anymore, right?" my daughter said. That's when I knew they had a plan for me, a plan that didn't include my name on the deed or my presence in the only home I've ever known. So, I did something they never saw coming. I'm Lila Jacobs. I'm 67 years old. I've been a mother for 43 of those years, a widow for 8. I raised a daughter who used to draw me little stick figures of our family with sunshine and hearts. Now she hands me paperwork with tiny print and asks if I've taken my memory pill. I wasn't always like this. Confused, tired, a little unsure. That's new. The forgetting, the naps in the middle of the day, the blank stares into nothing that started after I moved in with Jenna and her husband Eric 6 months ago. After my accident, they said. After I slipped in the kitchen and fractured my hip, they insisted I come stay with them, said it would only be temporary while I healed. I believed them. Because you want to believe your own child, don't you? You want to think that love runs deeper than convenience. But that morning, Jenna looked at me like a stranger. She sipped her coffee and said it so matter-of-factly, like she was reminding me that I left the stove on. "You know this house isn't yours anymore, right?" I looked up slowly, as if I hadn't heard her correctly. The fork paused halfway between the plate and my mouth. I gave her the kind of answer women my age learn to give when we don't want to start a fight before breakfast. "Well," I said, forcing a small smile, "we'll talk about it later." It was a careless response, too soft, too vague. Jenna's eyes narrowed immediately. She set her coffee mug down harder than necessary, the sound sharp against the granite counter. "No, Mom, we're talking about it now." I felt the air in the kitchen change. Across from her husband Eric leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching me the way people watch a situation they already think they've won. "I'm not feeling well this morning," I said. "Can we not—" "Stop," Jenna snapped. "That's exactly the problem. You're never feeling well. You forget things. You get confused. You drift off in the middle of conversations. This isn't safe anymore." Safe. That word again. Eric slid the small white pill toward me, placing it carefully beside my glass of water, like a chess move. "Just take this, Miss Jacobs. It'll help you stay calm." I nodded, because nodding was easier than arguing. "All right," I said. "I'll take it later." That wasn't enough for Jenna. She leaned forward, her voice rising, urgency spilling out now that I hadn't immediately submitted. "Mom, why are you pretending you don't understand? This house is too much for you. It's worth over $2 million, and you're rattling around in it like a ghost." My stomach tightened. "That house is my home." "It was," she corrected. "Now it's an asset, and assets need to be managed." Managed. Like a problem. Like me. She stood up, pacing the kitchen floor, her robe swishing around her legs. "We've been more than patient. Eric and I have talked to advisors, lawyers. There are forms you can sign. You just need to transfer the house to me. That way we can make sure everything is handled properly." I stared at her, my own daughter, and felt something inside my chest crack open. "You want me to sign my house over to you?" "Don't say it like that," she said sharply. "You're acting like I'm stealing from you. I'm protecting you." Eric nodded in agreement. "It's for your own good." My own good. I had given Jenna everything: piano lessons, summer camps, her college tuition, her wedding. I had held her hair back when she was sick, sat on the floor outside her room when she was 16 and heartbroken, driven across town in the middle of the night when she needed me. And now she was looking at me like an obstacle. "I need time," I said quietly. "I'm not ready for this." Jenna's face hardened. "You don't have time." Her voice dropped, cold and controlled. "If you won't do this willingly, there are other ways. Eric knows people, doctors, evaluators. We can have you declared incompetent if we have to." The word hit me like a slap. Incompetent. I pushed my chair back and stood on unsteady legs. "I'm going to lie down," I said. "We'll talk later." Neither of them stopped me. I walked down the hallway to the guest room, the room that used to be my sewing room, where I once made Jenna's Halloween costumes and repaired William's shirts. I closed the door behind me and sat on the edge of the bed, my hands shaking. I didn't cry then. I was still too shocked. A few hours later, I stepped out quietly, heading toward the kitchen to get a glass of water. I stopped short when I heard voices. Jenna and Eric were in the living room. They didn't know I was there. "She's resisting more than I thought," Jenna said, her voice tense. "But she's getting worse," You've seen it. Eric lowered his voice. That's why we need to stay consistent. If she skips doses, she'll start thinking too clearly. My heart began to pound. She's already forgetting entire days, Jenna continued. If we keep this up a little longer, the evaluation will be a formality. I pressed my hand to the wall to keep myself upright. Eric sighed. Once she's in assisted living, the house situation solves itself. She won't be in any condition to fight it. There it was. Not confusion. Not concern. A plan. I stepped back silently, my legs barely holding me, and returned to the bedroom. The moment the door closed, my knees buckled and I slid down against it, my back pressed to the wood. The tears came then. Hot, unstoppable, choking me as I covered my mouth to keep from making a sound. This was my child, the baby I'd rocked to sleep, the girl who once crawled into my bed during thunderstorms because she was afraid of the dark. And now she was discussing how to break me down chemically, legally, until I disappeared quietly. I cried for William, because he wasn't here to see this. I cried for the house, for the kitchen where I'd made birthday cakes and holiday dinners. I cried for myself, because no one ever tells you how much it hurts when the person who betrays you is the one you love most. That night, I didn't take the pill. I hid it in my pocket and flushed it down the toilet later, watching it dissolve and vanish. 3 days without it, my mind cleared. The fog lifted. The memories returned. I remembered everything they wanted me to forget: who I was, what I owned, what I deserved. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being dismantled. And I understood something then, through the ache and the tears and the shock that still trembled in my bones. If I stayed, they would finish the job. So I did what I had never done before in my life. I chose myself. And that was the moment everything began to change. If you felt this story in your heart, leave a like and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. You might just find someone nearby listening too. The next morning, I woke before the sun. The house was silent, still dark. Jenna and Eric weren't up yet, and Lucas wouldn't be awake for at least another hour. I moved carefully through the hallway, the ache in my joints familiar but manageable. For the first time in weeks, my head didn't feel like it was full of fog. 3 days without that little white pill, and it was like someone had opened the windows in my mind. The headaches were gone. The dizziness. I could remember what day it was. I could remember my own birthday. I could remember what I'd overheard in the living room, the cruel strategy Jenna and Eric were working on, and the house at the center of it all. I made my way into the kitchen. The smell of fresh wood polish lingered from Jenna's obsessive cleaning the night before. Everything in this house had become her version of perfect. The plants were fake, the books on the shelves, color-coded, untouched. The refrigerator held 6 identical oat milk lattes lined up like soldiers, not one homemade meal in sight. But there, next to the coffee machine, sat the pill bottle. Unlabeled. I picked it up, hands trembling, and turned it over. No markings, no pharmacy sticker. Just a generic amber bottle full of small white tablets. How had I not noticed that before? I unscrewed the cap and poured 2 into my palm. My fingers brushed the cool surface of the pills, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. I had been taking this every day. And every day, I lost a little more of myself. A soft sound made me spin around Lucas, standing in the hallway in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes. "Grandma?" he whispered. I quickly set the bottle down. "Hey, baby, you're up early." He walked over and leaned against me. "I had a bad dream," he said. I knelt down and hugged him tight, burying my face in his curls. My sweet boy. The only part of this house that still felt like love. "Want me to make you pancakes?" I asked. He nodded. "With chocolate chips?" "Always." As I cooked, Lucas sat at the counter, swinging his legs and telling me about his dream, something about a robot with a shark head. His innocence made me ache. I glanced toward the pill bottle again, then back at him. "Lucas," I said gently, "do you remember when you told me not to take my pills?" He looked down at the counter. "Yeah. Why did you say that?" He hesitated, then mumbled, "I heard Mommy say they make you sleepy. She told Daddy it's better when you don't ask so many questions." My heart clenched. "She said you forget stuff, and that makes things easier." "Easier for who?" I asked, though I already knew. Lucas shrugged, his eyes wide and unsure. I kissed the top of his head. "Thank you for telling me, baby. You did the right thing." After breakfast, when Jenna and Eric came downstairs, I acted normal, smiled, Pretended I was slow, dazed, sleepy. I even let them think I took the pill with my orange juice, hiding it under my tongue until I could spit it out in the bathroom. Jenna barely looked at me. She was all business rushing Lucas, checking her phone, barking at Eric about traffic. Eric lingered, though. Watched me closely. "You look better today," he said. "Rested." They did. "Maybe I'm just getting used to the routine," I replied, giving him a weak smile. He nodded, but there was something in his eyes I didn't like. A flicker of doubt, or maybe suspicion. I would have to be careful. Once they left for work, and Lucas went to school, I took the pill bottle, wrapped it in an old sweater, and placed it in the bottom of my travel bag. Then I called the only person I could trust. "Janet Keller, attorney at law." Her voice crackled over the line. "Janet," I said. "It's Lila." There was a pause. "Lila? Lord, it's been what, 7 years? 8, since William passed." She lowered her voice. "You okay?" I took a deep breath. "No, but I need your help." We agreed to meet at a quiet diner off Peachtree Road, the kind that still had red vinyl booths and served real coffee, not the fancy stuff with oat milk and cinnamon foam. I took a cab there, making sure no one followed me. Janet looked the same, silver hair pulled back tight, glasses perched low on her nose, a mind like a steel trap. I handed her the pill bottle, along with a copy of the house deed and a page of notes I'd written about Jenna and Eric's behavior. She read silently for a long time, then looked at me. "They're trying to incapacitate you. Legally, emotionally, maybe medically. If they can prove cognitive decline, they can gain control of your assets, especially the house." I nodded, tears brimming. "I don't want revenge," I said. "I just want out. I want to protect what's mine before they strip me of it." Janet nodded. "Then we do this quietly, legally, and on your terms." We drafted a plan. The house would be sold privately, through a buyer Janet knew, a couple moving from Florida, eager for a quick close. No sign in the yard, no listing online, cash offer. No trace until the paperwork was final. I would transfer the funds to a secure account under my name only, and then I'd disappear. It would take a few weeks to finalize everything. In the meantime, I had to keep pretending, keep smiling, keep swallowing fake pills and letting them believe they were winning. But now, I had a plan, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. Pretending to forget things was almost harder than actually forgetting them. Each day, I sank deeper into the role they expected from me, a dazed woman shuffling in slippers, sipping lukewarm tea, staring at blank walls like the past was all she had left. I let Jenna repeat herself 3 times before answering. I asked Eric where I'd put my coat when I knew it was in the front closet. I accidentally called Lucas by his father's name just to keep the illusion intact. They bought it. Or at least, they wanted to. The more I played into their assumptions, the less careful they became. Jenna stopped locking the drawer where she kept her files. Eric left his laptop open while he stepped out for phone calls. I began to notice patterns, how they spoke to me differently when Lucas was around, how Jenna would always end a difficult conversation by offering me a fresh glass of water, or a little something to help you relax. But I wasn't drinking anything unless I poured it myself. On the surface, our household moved along as if nothing had changed. School runs, grocery trips, Jenna's weekly yoga class, Eric's late meetings. Beneath it, I was documenting everything. I kept a small black notebook hidden behind the books on the hallway shelf, the only place neither of them ever touched. Inside, I recorded every conversation, every strange behavior, every time I caught them whispering behind closed doors. Janet told me, "Details win wars, Lila. Write it all down. You'll need it." So I did. March 12. Jenna added new pills to the Monday slot in the pill organizer, slightly different shape. I flushed them. March 15. Eric spoke on the phone with someone about her cognition status. Didn't say my name, but I was the only one home. March 18. Jenna looked angry when I asked for my mail. Said it was just bills and nothing I needed to worry about. The notebook was my memory's insurance policy. If they tried to make me doubt myself again, I would open those pages and remember, I'm not crazy, I'm not losing it, I'm being erased, and I won't go quietly. One afternoon, while Jenna was out at her yoga class and Eric had taken Lucas to the park, the doorbell rang. I hesitated. Most people don't expect visitors these days. Not without a text or a call first, but something told me to answer. I opened the door just enough to see a woman standing on the porch. She was middle-aged, wearing jeans, boots, and a plaid scarf. Her eyes were warm, curious. "Hi there," she said. "Are you Lila Jacobs?" My heart froze. "Who's asking?" "I'm Susan Mercer. I work with Janet Keller, your lawyer. She said you might be expecting someone to drop off a few things." I studied her face, and when she gave me Janet's old catchphrase, "Justice is never fast, but it always shows up," I stepped aside. She entered politely, holding a large manila envelope. "I have paperwork for the property transfer. Janet said you'd want to go over it privately." I led her to the dining table, offered her tea. She declined, and sat down as she opened the envelope. "These are the documents you'll need to sign once the buyer finishes their side," she explained. "Nothing binding yet, just preliminary steps, but it's moving." I felt something release inside my chest, a knot I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "Thank you," I said, voice cracking slightly. She paused. "Are you safe here, Mrs. Jacobs?" It took me a second to answer. "No," I admitted, "but I'm smart, and I'm patient." She nodded like she understood. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Just stay the course. Janet's handled bigger snakes than your son-in-law." That made me chuckle, and she smiled before gathering her things and heading out. I stood at the window and watched her drive off. I imagined the future waiting for me somewhere far from this place, maybe a quiet town with real neighbors and porches that didn't hide secrets. A place where I could bake without someone questioning if I remembered to turn off the oven. Later that night, Lucas climbed into bed with me. He'd had another nightmare, something about shadows in the hallway. "Can I sleep here, Grandma?" he asked. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, pulling the covers over him. He nestled in close, small fingers curling around mine. "Is Mommy mad at you?" he asked suddenly, his voice soft. I hesitated. "Why do you think that?" "She always looks mad when you smile." That shook me more than anything that had happened all week. I kissed his forehead. "Don't you worry about that, okay? You just sleep." But after he drifted off, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. There's a kind of grief no one prepares you for, the grief of watching someone you love become someone you fear. And yet, in that same house, in that same bed, the little boy beside me gave me a reason to keep fighting. I wasn't just saving myself anymore. I turned 68 on a Saturday in early April. Jenna woke me with a slice of almond cake and a flickering candle, acting like the perfect daughter. She sang "Happy Birthday" with a forced cheerfulness that didn't match the tightness in her eyes. Eric followed with a bouquet of supermarket flowers, the kind with cheap plastic wrap and discount stickers still on the stems. Lucas, thank God, was the only genuine part of the morning. He wrapped his arms around me so tightly I had to laugh. "Happy birthday, Grandma. You're the best grandma in the whole world." His voice gave me the only warmth I would feel that day. The rest of the celebration was hollow. Jenna had invited a few of her friends, all dressed like catalog models, all smiling too brightly. They called me sweetheart and darling, spoke slowly, and asked if I remembered who they were, though I'd never met any of them before in my life. Eric played host, pouring wine and steering conversations, keeping the spotlight on Jenna's renovations and his new business deal. I sat in a corner, forgotten, my slice of cake untouched. But what really tipped me off was the folder. I found it by accident while putting away some dishes in Jenna's office, her so-called home command center. The guests were still chatting in the backyard, distracted. The folder was tucked between bills and magazines labeled simply, LJ Transition. I pulled it out, heart pounding, and flipped it open. Inside were documents, medical evaluations I'd never seen, notes from phone calls with social workers, a drafted letter to a facility called Whispering Pines, with phrases like decline in cognition, inability to manage finances, and potential need for memory care. They were building a case. And worse, there was a power of attorney form inside, dated, signed, my signature. Only, I never signed it. I stared at the scribbled name, the shaky handwriting meant to mimic mine. It was close, but not close enough. My hands trembled. My ears rang. That's when I heard the sound of footsteps' heels on hardwood. I quickly shoved the folder back, closed the drawer, and turned just as Jenna entered the room. "There you are," she said. "Everyone's been looking for you." I smiled. I was just putting away the extra napkins. She stepped closer, her voice sweet but cool. "Why don't you come outside? Eric's about to cut the second cake." "I'm fine here," I said softly. Her smile faltered. "Mom, please don't be difficult today." Difficult. That word again. She placed a hand on my shoulder, light but firm. "You know we're doing what's best for you, right? You've been so forgetful lately. It's not safe for you to be alone anymore." I looked her in the eye. "I remember more than you think." She flinched. Just slightly. I turned and walked back to the party, but my mind was racing. I had proof now, evidence that Jenna and Eric weren't just manipulating me emotionally. They were fabricating legal documents, preparing to take everything. That night, once everyone had left and the house was quiet again, I went into my room, locked the door, and retrieved my notebook. I wrote down everything: the folder, the forged signature, the exact names on the facility letterhead. I called Janet. "This is bigger than I thought," I told her. "They forged my signature." Her voice was calm but firm. "Okay, that changes everything. We'll need to expedite the sale and file a fraud report. But we have to be careful. If they sense you're on to them, they might act fast. Do not confront them directly, not yet." "I won't," I said. "But I want this over. I want out. I'll start the paperwork tomorrow." I hung up and sat in the dark. It was the first birthday I'd spent without William. He always took me to the same Italian restaurant, the one with the red and white checkered tablecloths and the tiramisu that made me cry the first time I tasted it. He would have hated this day. I felt something wet on my cheek. I didn't even realize I'd started crying. Not because I was sad, because I was furious. The next morning, I made pancakes for Lucas before school. He chatted about a science project, asked if I'd come to his presentation next week. I promised I would. After he left, Jenna entered the kitchen and offered me a fresh cup of tea. I accepted it with a smile. Then, when she wasn't looking, I poured it down the sink. I was done playing their game. The clock was ticking now, and I was going to beat them at their own plan. On Monday morning, I told Jenna I wanted to take a walk. She raised an eyebrow. "Alone?" I gave a weak smile. The doctor said, "Walking's good for my circulation, remember?" She hesitated, calculating, then shrugged. "Fine. But don't go too far. And keep your phone on." I slipped on my jacket and headed out the door, but I didn't go to the park or the usual coffee shop. Instead, I walked 3 blocks to the UPS store on the corner, the only place within reach that had a notary. Janet had emailed me a fresh set of legal documents: a revocation of power of attorney, a notarized statement of mental competency from a geriatric psychologist she trusted, and most importantly, the final documents for the sale of the house. All I had to do was sign. I stood at the counter, hands trembling slightly as I scrawled my name in black ink. The notary, a young woman with bright blue hair, didn't ask questions. She just verified my ID, stamped the documents, and slid them into a return envelope. "Want me to ship this priority?" she asked. "Overnight," I said. "Every minute counts." When I stepped back out onto the sidewalk, the sun was bright. Too bright. The world suddenly felt different, like I was finally steering the wheel of my own life again. Not just a passenger in someone else's plan. But I couldn't celebrate yet. Back home, Jenna didn't ask where I'd gone, but her eyes followed me longer than usual. Eric barely looked up from his laptop, but I saw the tension in his jaw. They could feel it, something shifting. That afternoon, I pretended to nap while they had a conversation in the kitchen. The hallway vent carried voices clearly if I lay just right on the bedroom rug. "She's acting off," Eric said. "Too quiet." "You said she was getting worse," Jenna replied. "She was. Now she's sharp, almost like before. Maybe the dosage isn't strong enough. Maybe she's not taking it." There was silence. Then Jenna's voice, low and deliberate. "We need to move fast," whispering, "Pines can take her on short notice if we confirm cognitive decline. But we need proof, a doctor's assessment, a paper trail." I gritted my teeth. They wanted to create a version of me on paper that didn't exist, a woman too far gone to fight, too confused to argue. But they didn't know that my paper trail was already in motion, and it led in the opposite direction. The next day, Janet called. Documents arrived. "The sale is official. $2 million, cash buyer. The funds are in a protected trust account in your name only." I felt like I'd been holding my breath for weeks. "Now comes the hard part," Janet said. You need to leave before they find out. Quietly. No goodbyes." I hung up and walked slowly to my room. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the quilt folded neatly across the footboard William's quilt. He used to joke that it was the only thing in the house he'd managed to finish without breaking a sweat. I pulled it into my lap and ran my fingers across the worn fabric. There were pieces of our life sewn into it. Lucas's baby blanket, part of Jenna's old prom dress, even a square of the shirt William wore the day we signed the mortgage. That house was never just a building. It was history. It was marriage. It was motherhood. It was grief and laughter and time itself. Now it was gone. And I felt strangely free. That evening, while Jenna and Eric were arguing about something in the garage, I packed a small bag, just a few clothes, some cash, my IDs, and the black notebook. Lucas knocked on my door as I was zipping it shut. "Grandma?" I turned quickly, stuffing the bag under the bed. "Yes, sweetie?" He climbed onto the bed beside me, holding a small drawing. "I made this for you." It was a picture of the two of us on a boat, sailing under a giant sun. "I want to go on a boat with you someday," he said. I hugged him tightly. "Me too." "Are you going somewhere?" he asked, glancing at the bag. "Just for a little while," I said carefully. "But you'll be okay. And I'll always be thinking of you." He nodded, as if he already knew. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I waited until 2 a.m. I dressed quietly, tucked the envelope with the sale confirmation into my purse, and slipped out the back door. I didn't look back. I caught a taxi at the corner and gave the driver an address in the next town, an inn Janet had arranged, a temporary stop, a soft place to land. As the car pulled away from the house, I felt something rise in my chest, not sorrow, not fear. Relief. I wasn't running away. I was reclaiming my life. The inn smelled like lemon cleaner and old books. That was the first thing I noticed when the taxi pulled away and left me standing alone on the narrow sidewalk, my small suitcase at my feet. The building was nothing special, 2 stories, beige siding, a flickering porch light, but it felt like another world compared to the house I'd just left behind. I checked in under my own name. Not Mom, not Grandma, not Miss Jacobs. We'll handle it for you. Just Lila. The woman behind the desk smiled kindly, slid a brass key across the counter, and told me breakfast was served from 7 to 9. No questions, no concern, no thinly veiled calculations about my mental state. Room 214. Up the stairs, second door on the left. When I closed the door behind me, the silence pressed in. Not the suffocating silence of a house where people whisper behind your back, but a clean, honest, quiet. I set my bag down slowly, as if any sudden movement might shatter the moment. The room was simple. A bed with a faded blue quilt, a small desk, a window overlooking a parking lot, and, beyond it, a line of trees just beginning to bud. Early spring. New things trying to grow. I sat on the edge of the bed and waited for panic to come. It didn't. Instead, there was a strange calm, threaded with exhaustion so deep it felt bone-heavy. My body finally understood what my mind had known for weeks. I was safe. For tonight, at least. I lay back and stared at the ceiling, listening to the hum of distant traffic. No footsteps in the hallway, no murmured conversations through vents, no pills waiting by a glass of water. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. One message. "Jenna, where are you?" I stared at the screen until it went dark again. I didn't respond. Not because I was cruel, not because I wanted to punish her, but because silence, for once, belonged to me. Sleep came in pieces. I drifted in and out, waking from dreams where William stood in the doorway of our old kitchen, smiling sadly, shaking his head like he always did when Jenna and I argued. "Let it go, Lee," he used to say. "Some fights don't need winning." This one did. I woke just after dawn, disoriented for a moment, then remembered where I was and why. Light filtered through the thin curtains, pale and forgiving. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and stood carefully. My joints complained, but my head was clear, clearer than it had been in months. In the bathroom mirror, I barely recognized myself, not because I looked old, but because I looked awake. The dark circles under my eyes were still there, but the glaze, the dullness that had crept in over time was gone. I brushed my hair, washed my face, and for the first time in a long while, I liked the woman staring back at me. Downstairs, the breakfast room was quiet. 2 other guests sat near the window, murmuring over coffee. I poured myself a cup black, strong, and sat alone at a small table. Halfway through my toast, my phone buzzed again. 3 missed calls. 2 texts. "Mom, this isn't funny. Where did you go?" Still nothing from Eric. That told me everything. He was already thinking ahead, already calculating damage control. Jenna was panicking, Eric was planning. I finished breakfast, took my time, and returned to my room. I pulled out the black notebook and opened it to a fresh page. April Noah. Left the house at 2:07 a.m. No confrontation, no pills. Then I wrote something else, something I hadn't allowed myself to think yet. What comes next? By noon, Janet called. "They know," she said without preamble. Jenna called my office screaming. Eric threatened legal action. I exhaled slowly. And they don't have a leg to stand on. The house sale is finalized. The trust is secure, and I've filed a report regarding the forged power of attorney. My hands tightened around the phone. What happens now? Now, Janet said, they'll try to find you, pressure you, guilt you, maybe scare you. I won't go back. I know, she said gently, but you should be prepared. This is the part where they stop pretending. After we hung up, I walked outside and sat on a bench near the trees. A breeze carried the smell of damp earth and pine. Somewhere nearby, a bird called out sharp and insistent. I thought of Lucas. I imagined him waking up, eating cereal at the kitchen counter, asking where Grandma was. I wondered what Jenna told him, that I'd gone to rest, that I was sick, or that I'd abandoned them. The thought cut deep, but not deep enough to turn me back. Loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. That afternoon, I bought a prepaid phone at a small electronics store 2 blocks away. New number, clean slate. I memorized it, then turned the phone off and placed it in my purse. I wasn't hiding. I was choosing when and how to be found. That night, as I lay in bed, another message came through on my old phone. A voicemail this time. I listened, once. "Mom," Jenna's voice cracked, sharp with anger and fear. "You can't just disappear. Do you have any idea what you've done? Call me, now." It sprayed dialy. I set the phone down. For the first time since William died, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness. Not yet. But peace. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that I would never sleep under that roof again. I spent the next few days in a strange kind of limbo-free, but not untethered. Every morning, I walked through the quiet streets of the small town where the inn sat, breathing in the fresh air, observing the rhythm of people who didn't know me and didn't expect anything from me. I bought a fresh-baked cinnamon roll from the corner bakery, sat with my coffee on a bench beneath a budding oak tree, and watched mothers rush their children off to school, retirees linger with newspapers, young couples walking dogs. They looked like life, and I felt like I was slowly re-entering it. Back in my room, I began to write. Not in the black notebook this time, but in a new one. A red leather-bound journal I bought at the bookstore 2 blocks down on impulse, or maybe instinct. Its pages would not be for evidence or strategy. They would be for me. For truth. For closure. For the letters I'd never send. I started with Lucas. Dear Lucas, I don't know when you'll be old enough to understand everything that's happened. Maybe one day, you'll ask about that spring I disappeared. Maybe your mother will give you her version of the story. If she does, just know that I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I had to remember how to love myself again. You were my light in that dark house, the only reason I held on as long as I did. You're kind, you're observant, and I hope you grow up to be the kind of man who listens to his heart, even when it's scary. Love, Grandma. I cried, writing it. Not loud sobs, but the kind of quiet tears that come from a deep well grief and release all tangled up. The next day, I wrote to Jenna. Dear Jenna, you won't read this, but I'll write it anyway. I used to think I failed you somewhere, that maybe I smothered you, or didn't give you enough space, or said no too often when you wanted a yes. But now I see that I didn't fail you, I just refused to be the version of mother you needed in your story. You wanted my silence, my assets, my obedience. You wanted my legacy, without me in it. I hope one day, when your reflection starts to resemble mine, you'll understand what it feels like to be discarded by the person you gave your life to. I loved you. I still do. But I will no longer let that love cost me everything. Mom! I sealed both letters in envelopes and placed them in the back of my suitcase. Maybe one day I'd send them, maybe not. By the end of the week, Janet called again. "They've hired a lawyer," she said. "A firm in the city. They're trying to contest the sale, claim mental duress." I laughed bitterly. "They drugged me and faked a power of attorney. But I was under duress?" "They'll lose," Janet said. "But they're not playing for legal victory. They're playing for noise. To rattle you, to force you to show up." "Well, it won't work." "Good," she said, "because I've got something better." That afternoon, I met her in person for the first time in years. She drove up from the city and took me to a diner we used to frequent in our 30s, booths with peeling leather, waitresses who remembered your name, and cherry pie that could make you cry. She slid a thin folder across the table. "What's this?" I asked. "Leverage," she said. "A private investigator owed me a favor. We ran background on Eric." I opened the folder. It was worse than I expected. There were financial irregularities in his business, pending lawsuits he hadn't disclosed, and rumors of a previous partner who'd filed harassment claims that mysteriously disappeared after a settlement. "He's not just shady," Janet said. "He's a ticking bomb. If this ever came to light, Jenna's precious reputation in the community would go up in smoke. They're not as secure as they think." I leaned back in the booth, stunned. "So, what do I do with this?" "Nothing," she said. "Not unless they keep pushing. But now you know if they want to fight dirty, you've got ammunition, and a hell of a lot more dignity." I nodded slowly. "Thank you." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "This isn't just about real estate, Lila. This is about power, and you just took yours back." That night, back at the inn, I watched the sunset from my window. The sky turned soft orange, fading into blue, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel hunted. I felt ready. Whatever came next, calls, lawyers, threats, I would face it. Not from fear, but from strength. The knock came just after noon on a Wednesday. I was making tea, humming to myself, enjoying the kind of slow, quiet afternoon I hadn't had in years. The kettle had just begun to whistle when I heard it 3 short, firm knocks on the in-room door. My hands froze mid-reach. I wasn't expecting anyone. Janet always called first, and the innkeeper never knocked unless it was to drop off towels or check a leaky faucet. I turned the burner off and moved toward the door slowly, heart thudding. Then a voice. "Mom?" "Jenna." I didn't move. My body locked in place like a statue. "Mom, I know you're in there. Please." I stared at the door, every part of me screaming to stay silent. But something made me reach out and crack it open an inch. Just enough to see her standing there disheveled, eyes red, a tightness in her face I hadn't seen since William's funeral. She looked like someone unraveling. "I just want to talk," she said quickly. "Please." I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "I didn't tell you where I was," I said quietly. "No, you didn't," she replied, stepping inside anyway. "But Eric has access to tracking software. He found the ping from your phone." "Of course. I should have turned it off sooner. I didn't come here to fight," Jenna said, voice low, eyes scanning the room as if looking for something proof of guilt or innocence, or maybe just something to hold on to. "Then why are you here?" She sat down on the edge of the bed without asking, like she still owned the right to my space. I don't understand," she said. "Why you would do this, why you'd sell the house without telling us, disappear. You scared Lucas half to death." I folded my arms. "And how scared was Lucas when you were planning to put me away?" Her head snapped up. "What?" "I heard you, Jenna. I heard everything. The pills, the forged papers, the calls to the care facility. You were going to throw me away like a worn-out coat." "I was protecting you," she said, defensive. "You were slipping. I was drugged," I cut in sharply. "You watched it happen. You let it happen. And now you're here because you know I took everything before you could. If you don't today..." She looked stunned for a moment, then angry. "You think this is about money?" I laughed bitterly. "Isn't it always?" Her voice cracked. "I was scared, Mom. You were getting worse. And Eric, he said you needed supervision, that if we didn't act, we'd lose control of the house, that someone would take advantage of you." "No, Jenna. I said firmly. You were taking advantage of me. There was a long silence between us. The air felt thick, almost tangible. I wanted to make things easier, she said finally, eyes on the carpet. After Dad died, you changed. You weren't reachable. I swallowed hard. That's called grief. I know. But you shut down. You shut me out. I took a slow breath. So your answer was to erase me? She looked away. That was all the answer I needed. I stepped toward the desk, opened the drawer, and pulled out a copy of the report Janet had compiled on Eric. I held it out. What's this? Proof, I said. Of who you married, of what he's done. You think I ran away to punish you? I ran to save myself from both of you. She took the folder reluctantly, flipping through the pages. Her hands trembled. When she looked back up, her face had changed. Something in it cracked, not anger, not shame, but something more complicated. Maybe recognition. Maybe regret. You're not the woman I remember, she whispered. Good, I said, because the woman you remember let you walk all over her. End quote. I didn't mean, she started. I know what you meant, I interrupted. But meaning doesn't matter when the damage is done. She stood, holding the folder like it weighed 100 pounds. I should go. Yes, I said. You should. She walked to the door, paused, and turned. Will you come home? I met her gaze. No, that home doesn't exist anymore. Then I closed the door, gently but firmly, and I cried. Not because she left, but because I finally did. The following morning, I woke to sunlight filtering through the curtains and the sound of birdsong, a melody I hadn't really heard in months. For a long time, I just lay there, letting the quiet settle over me like a balm. No voices behind walls, no clinking dishes downstairs, no suspicion trailing my every step, just peace. But even peace has its echoes. Jenna's visit had shaken something loose in me, memories, questions, unfinished thoughts. I didn't regret anything I'd said, but I couldn't stop replaying her last words. Will you come home? Home. What a funny word. So small, and yet it held the weight of everything I'd just escaped. Still, a part of me small, stubborn, aching, wondered if there had been something real behind her tears. Regret? Fear? A glimmer of the daughter I used to know? I didn't know, but the doubt lingered. I spent the rest of the morning cleaning up the room, organizing my things, and folding the letters I'd written back into their envelopes. Then I went out for a walk, needing air and space to think. The town was slowly becoming familiar, its quiet rhythm comforting. I knew the baker by name now. I smiled at the older man who swept the sidewalk every morning, and the woman at the diner no longer asked for my order. She just brought me coffee the way I liked it, black, hot, no sugar. It was a kind of belonging I hadn't felt in years. When I returned to the inn, there was a small white envelope on my pillow. No stamp, no handwriting, just my name typed on a label. I froze. For a moment, I thought Jenna had come back. I opened it with cautious fingers. Inside was a note, short, typed, unsigned. She's lying to you. Eric's not done. Be careful who you trust. My breath caught in my chest. I read it again, and again. Then I checked the hallway. Nothing. No one. I showed it to the innkeeper downstairs, a woman named Trish, who reminded me of my mother's best friend growing up, sharp, no-nonsense, kind behind the sarcasm. No one came in asking for you, she said. But we don't have cameras in the hallways, just at the front and back doors. You want me to check? I hesitated. Yes, please. 10 minutes later, we were watching grainy footage from earlier that afternoon. Around 11:20, someone in a gray hoodie slipped through the front entrance, head down, face obscured. They moved quickly, like they knew where they were going. Could have been anyone, Trish muttered. Could have been Eric, I whispered. My hands were clammy. Why now? Why a warning? Was Jenna turning on Eric, or was this someone else entirely? Back in my room, I examined the note again. No fingerprint smudges. Standard paper. Plain ink. Whoever sent it knew what they were doing. Janet called that evening to check in. I told her about Jenna's visit and the envelope. She went quiet for a moment, then said, "Don't ignore this, Lila. If they're watching you, we need to assume they're planning something. I'm already out, they've lost." That's when people are most dangerous, when they've got nothing to lose and too much pride to accept defeat. I sighed. So what now? I'll have someone sweep your room. Check for bugs. Track down where the note might have come from." End quote. Should I leave? Not yet, she said. Let's see what they do next. But keep your head low. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, notebook in hand, watching the parking lot below. Every movement, a passing car, a pedestrian, even the flicker of the streetlight felt like a threat. I wasn't afraid. I was alert. And I was done being the hunted. If Eric wanted a fight, he was about to learn that the woman he underestimated, the woman he tried to erase, wasn't just alive. She was angry. I began my counterattack on a Thursday. It started not with fire or fury, but with a phone call. I dialed the number Janet gave me the night before, a contact of hers who specialized in digital forensics. His name was Kevin, and his voice was calm, methodical, like someone who'd seen every kind of deception imaginable. "First thing we do," he said, "is clean your digital footprint. Your phone, your email, even your old social media accounts, anything they can trace or manipulate." "Done," I said. "What's next?" "I send you a tracker detector. We'll check your room for surveillance. Meanwhile, I need you to document everything, every call, every note, every person you see. I've been doing that since day one." I could almost hear him smile. "Good. That's rare." He overnighted the device. I picked it up from the front desk the next morning, a plain black wand with a single blinking light. When I swept it across the room, it beeped twice. One was a tracking chip sewn into the lining of my coat. The other was a small bug tucked behind the wall art near the bed. I stared at them both, heart racing but steady. They had been listening. Eric wasn't just guessing where I was, he had ears inside the room. I didn't tell Trish the innkeeper. I didn't tell anyone except Kevin and Janet. We needed the element of surprise. I kept the bug in place but unplugged it briefly while I stitched a decoy chip into an old sweater I planned to toss in the donation bin. "Let them chase that one into the next town. Time to turn the tables," Kevin said. Janet moved quickly. By the end of the week, she'd arranged a meeting with a local judge, a woman in her late 60s, sharp-eyed, known for her intolerance toward elder exploitation cases. We showed her everything: the falsified documents, the audio logs of Jenna and Eric's conversations, the forged power of attorney, and the latest evidence of surveillance. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. 2 days later, a protective order was granted. Eric and Jenna were legally prohibited from contacting me directly or indirectly. If they tried, they'd face felony charges. But I knew that wouldn't stop Eric. Not yet. So I made myself bait. I logged into my old email account, one I hadn't used in years, and sent a message to Jenna. Subject: I'm tired of hiding. Body: I'm willing to talk. Just you. No lawyers, no Eric. Meet me Sunday, 11 a.m. at Dad's favorite diner. It was the place William and I had celebrated every anniversary. The last time I'd been there was the day after his funeral, when I sat alone and couldn't finish my meal. Now I was going back. But this time, I wouldn't be alone. Kevin and Janet would be nearby. Trish, bless her soul, insisted on coming too, claiming she hadn't felt this useful since the Clinton years. Sunday came, and I arrived early. I wore William's old leather coat, the one with the inside pocket I'd sewn myself. Inside was a tiny recorder voice activated, just in case. I didn't know if Jenna would show up, but at 10:58, the door swung open. It wasn't Jenna. It was Eric. He looked different. Not disheveled, not desperate, controlled. Too controlled. He sat across from me like nothing had happened, like we were old friends meeting for coffee. "Where is she?" I asked. "She's not coming," he said. She didn't know I saw the email, but I did. And I thought, why waste an opportunity? I stayed calm. "You violated the order." He shrugged. "Prove it." The recorder clicked silently in my pocket. "What do you want, Eric?" "I want what you stole," he said, his voice low and deadly. "You think you won because you ran? Because you got your lawyer friend and your pathetic little trust fund? That house was supposed to be ours. You were supposed to fade away quietly. And instead," I said softly, "I woke up." He leaned in, eyes narrowing. "You don't understand the kind of people I work with. You think this ends with a restraining order? With a sale? You don't know how far this goes." I met his gaze, steady and unblinking. "You're right, I don't. But a judge will." And it makes to laugh, he scoffed, until Janet stepped forward from the next booth, holding up her phone. Already did, she said. I recorded everything. You're done. Eric's mouth fell open. Then he looked at me, not angry, empty, like a man who had finally realized the trap he'd walked into. I stood, slowly, gathering my coat. You underestimated me, I said. So did she. That was your first mistake. I walked out without looking back. That afternoon, the judge approved an emergency order for arrest. Eric was taken into custody that evening. Jenna, once confronted with the evidence, broke down, finally admitting to everything. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like relief, like breathing without guilt, like surviving. I thought I'd feel triumphant. I thought the day Eric was taken away in handcuffs would bring some grand feeling of justice, a soaring moment where the sky cleared and all the broken pieces of my life clicked back into place. But that isn't how it felt. Instead, I sat alone in my room that evening, listening to the gentle hum of the radiator, the soft creak of the ceiling above me, and the wind rustling through the trees outside, the sound of stillness. It was louder than I remembered. I brewed tea slowly, watching the water boil, the leaves steep. My hands moved without thought, guided by years of repetition, a ritual, familiar, safe. The phone buzzed. Janet. It's done, she said softly. He's being processed now. The judge denied bail. Flight risk. And Jenna? She's cooperating. She's claimed she was manipulated. She's offering full testimony in exchange for immunity. I closed my eyes. I should have been relieved, but all I felt was tired. She'll walk away from this, I said. Won't she? Janet hesitated. Most likely, yes. She doesn't deserve that. No, she said gently, but sometimes justice looks like survival, not revenge. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Thank you. End quote. Lila, she said after a pause, you don't have to keep fighting. The war is over. But was it? Later that night, I took out the letters again, the ones I'd written to Lucas, to Jenna, to myself. I reread them slowly, my fingers tracing the edges of the pages like they held more weight than they should. Then, I pulled out a fresh sheet. I needed to write something different this time, not to explain the past, but to imagine the future. Dear me, you did not break. You bent. You trembled. You doubted. But you did not break. You stood up. You spoke. You reclaimed the ground beneath your feet. You walked away not because you were weak, but because you finally knew your worth. This is not the end. This is the beginning. So take the next step. Not with fear, but with grace. I folded the letter and tucked it between the pages of my notebook. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I made a list. Places I want to visit. Savannah, Portland, the coast of Maine. That little bookstore in Vermont Janet always talked about. Things I want to learn. Watercolor, maybe Italian, how to cook something other than casseroles. People I want to write to. Lucas. A real letter this time. One I might actually send. I wasn't running anymore. But I wasn't returning either. The house was gone. The court battles were closing. Eric was behind bars. Jenna had chosen her path, and I had chosen mine. Now came the part no one prepared me for. The blank page. Rebuilding not what I had lost, but who I wanted to become. The next morning, I went to the local library and applied for a volunteer position. I told them I liked organizing, that I was good with quiet, that I had a lot of time on my hands and more stories than I could count. They said yes. I started the following Monday. On Wednesday, a boy walked in with a stack of torn-up picture books, face red with embarrassment. His mother whispered apologies. I knelt beside him and said, "Books are like people. Sometimes they tear, but that doesn't mean they can't be mended." He looked at me like I was magic. And maybe I was. Later that evening, I wrote Lucas another letter. This time, I wrote it with the quiet belief that someday, somehow, he might read it. Not as a child caught in adult chaos, but as a man who might one day understand what his grandmother chose and why. Dear Lucas, I'm learning again. Not just how to live, but how to begin. And I hope, wherever you are, you're learning too. It had been 3 weeks since the court hearing. Life, quiet and unassuming, had begun to wrap around me like a soft quilt, uneven in places, but warm. I fell into a rhythm. Mornings at the library, afternoons at the bakery, or walking the wooded trail behind the inn, evenings with my journal and hot tea in hand. I was healing. Not just from Eric and Jenna, but from a lifetime of putting everyone else first. So when Trish knocked on my door that Saturday morning, holding a small bouquet of daffodils and a puzzled look, I knew something was off. "These are for you," she said, handing me the flowers. "And there's someone downstairs asking for you, says he's family." My heart thudded once, hard. Lucas. It was my first thought, my first hope. But when I descended the stairs and turned the corner, it wasn't Lucas standing near the fireplace. It was Jenna, alone. She looked smaller, as if something had deflated inside her. Her makeup was light, her hair pulled back, her clothes casual and without pretense. No ring on her finger, no designer bag slung over her shoulder. Just my daughter, stripped down to the woman she must have been before Eric. "Mom," she said. I didn't speak. She took a step closer. "I don't have an agenda. I'm not here to ask for money or favors or forgiveness. I wanted to see you." I nodded toward a small seating area near the window. "Talk." She sat, nervously clutching her hands together. "Eric's being held without bail. He's facing 4 counts, 2 financial crimes, one related to elder fraud, and another for violating the protective order." I said nothing. She looked at me, her eyes red-rimmed. "They told me I was lucky not to be charged." "You were," I said quietly. "Luck has nothing to do with innocence." She nodded, biting her lip. "I know, and I'm not proud of what I did. I let someone manipulate me. I let ambition speak louder than love, and I hurt you. Deeply." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't come here to fix everything," she continued. "I know I can't. But I want to be honest. The past few weeks, I've been seeing a counselor. I'm trying to understand why I let myself become someone who would hurt her own mother. It's not who I thought I was." I studied her face. There was no performance in her voice this time, no strategy. Just the messy, painful truth of someone facing themselves in the mirror. "Why now?" I asked. "Because I miss you," she whispered. "Not the house, not the trust. You, and because Lucas keeps asking about you. I told him you were traveling, but that's starting to sound more like a lie." I closed my eyes briefly. "Lucas." She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "He made you this," she said, laying it on the table. It was a drawing crayon, uneven but earnest. A small house, a smiling stick figure labeled Grandma, and the words, "I love you," written in shaky blue letters. I pressed my hand against my mouth, holding back a sob. "I didn't know what to do," Jenna said, "but I knew I couldn't let more time pass without trying." I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said, "You're not the only one who's been in therapy, Jenna." She blinked. "Really?" I nodded. "Grief doesn't just go away, it hides in your bones. And sometimes it makes you forget who you are. But remembering, that's the hardest part." She wiped her eyes. "So, what now?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "I'm not ready to come back. I don't think I ever will. But maybe. We start again. Slowly. Letters. Calls. No expectations. No pressure." She exhaled. "I'd like that." I stood. Slowly. "Give Lucas a hug for me." "I will." "And Jenna?" She looked up. "Don't waste this chance. Life doesn't give many." She nodded, eyes shining. "I won't." After she left, I sat by the window for a long time, holding Lucas's drawing in my lap. The inn was quiet again, but something had shifted, not a return to the past, but a new branch forming in a tree I thought was dying. Maybe some things could bloom again, even in broken soil. I didn't see it coming. The letter arrived on a Tuesday plain white envelope, slightly crinkled at the edges. No stamp because it was hand-delivered by a courier with a careful knock and a respectful nod. I was in the middle of reorganizing the volunteer section at the library when Trish slipped it into my hand. "For you," she said. No note. No clue who sent it. My heartbeat skipped. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Not printed, not typed, not formal, just honest. Lucas. I was trembling as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper. "Dear Grandma, I miss you. I miss the pancakes you make and your laugh and the way you smell like cinnamon and sunshine. Mom tries to tell me you're okay, but I miss you anyway. I don't like school lunches when you're not here. I drew this for you. At the bottom was a little sketch of us, me and him, on a picnic blanket under a smiling sun. No bigger words, no apologies, no explanations, just love. Tears rolled down my cheeks before I even realized they were forming. I folded the letter carefully and sat in the quiet corner of the library, heart pounding with warmth and ache and hope all at once. I had been writing letters I didn't plan to send, but this one, I had to answer. I sat down then and wrote slowly, choosing every word as if I were stitching them into a quilt. Dear Lucas, thank you for your beautiful letter and for the drawing. I keep it with me always. I miss you too. More than you know, I am safe, and I am learning new things every day. One day, I hope we'll sit together again and eat pancakes with extra chocolate chips. Until then, know that I think of you whenever the sun rises and whenever you see a bird in the sky. Grandma loves you forever. With all my heart, Grandma. I folded it, sealed it, and handed it to Trish with instructions on where to deliver it far enough away that no one would suspect, but close enough that Lucas would get it soon. That night, I called Janet. I have an idea, I said. What's that? She asked. I want to visit him, I whispered. There wasn't a long silence on the other end, just a steady, reassuring voice. We'll make sure it's safe, she said. We'll arrange the travel and the lodging and the meeting place. I'll call Jenna and coordinate it. But no surprises. Everything above board. I exhaled, relief and fear intertwining in my chest. You promise I'll see him? I promise, she said. I sat back in my chair, letting the promise settle in. It felt like sunrise after a long, long night. The next morning, I walked into the library with a new spring in my step. I filed books with a little more purpose, greeted every patron with a full smile, and even offered help to a shy boy picking out his first chapter book. I wasn't healing because I was ready. I was healing because there was something to heal toward, and that something had a name. Lucas. By Friday, the arrangements were made. I was going to see him in 2 weeks. Not in the house where betrayal lived. Not in a courtroom. Not in the shade of past pain. But in a park picnic area with a basket of pancakes, extra chocolate chips, a sketchbook, and an open heart. A place suspended between past and future where we could begin again in small steps, side by side. I placed Lucas's letter in my journal and closed it gently. Then, I wrote one more line at the bottom of the page. I am ready. The day of the visit dawned warm and golden. I woke before sunrise, too restless to sleep, my mind buzzing with cautious joy and the ache of anticipation. I packed the picnic basket myself, carefully folded cloth napkins, a thermos of hot chocolate, a small jar of whipped cream, and, of course, the pancakes. Not just any pancakes. Lucas's favorite fluffy, golden, stacked high with extra chocolate chips and a hint of cinnamon. I tied a blue ribbon around the basket's handle, the same color as the crayon he'd used to write "I love you" in his letter. I don't know why, it just felt right. The meeting was arranged for 10 a.m. at Holloway Park, a small, quiet green space, halfway between my town and theirs. Neutral ground, safe. Janet had arranged for a plainclothes officer to be nearby, just in case Eric had left behind any unwelcome shadows. But I wasn't afraid. Not today. I arrived 20 minutes early. The park was nearly empty, just a jogger with earbuds, a man walking his golden retriever, and a mother pushing a stroller near the pond. I found the spot Janet had described. A wooden table under a broad maple tree, dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves like soft lace. I laid out the checkered blanket, set the pancakes and thermos down, and tried to slow my racing heartbeat. Then, in the distance, I saw them. Jenna, walking with Lucas beside her, his hand in hers, his steps quick and eager. He spotted me before she did. He let go of her hand and ran. Grandma! I stood just in time to catch him in my arms, the weight of him pressing against my chest like he'd never left it. I buried my face in his hair, breathing in that familiar scent grass, sunshine, something unmistakably Lucas. I missed you, he whispered fiercely. I missed you more, I said, voice thick with tears. Jenna approached slowly, watching us with a quiet expression, equal parts reverence and shame. I gave her a small nod, and she sat on the far side of the table, letting the moment belong to me and my grandson. Lucas pulled out a folded drawing from his pocket. It's us, he said proudly. At the park. I unfolded it. This time, he had drawn the pancakes too huge, golden, almost cartoonish, with chocolate chips the size of his eyes. I laughed. We sat together, and he talked non-stop about school, about his teacher, about the lizard he saw last week, and the weird noise the refrigerator made when it's angry. He told me about the science project he was building and how he named his Lego robot Harold. He asked if I'd come live near them again. Before I could answer, Jenna interjected gently, "Lucas, Grandma's happy where she is now." Lucas looked disappointed, but only for a second. "As long as you visit," he said. "A lot." "Thanks for watching," I smiled. "As much as I can." We ate the pancakes together. He dipped his in whipped cream and made a sticky mess, and I didn't care. Jenna even took one, quietly, and ate it slowly, as if trying to remember how it used to taste. Toward the end of our visit, Jenna stood. "There's something I want to say," she said quietly. Lucas was occupied with a squirrel a few feet away, tossing it bits of pancake, so she spoke quickly. "I know I haven't earned anything. Not your forgiveness, not even your time. But watching him with you today, I remembered who I used to be before everything. Before Eric." I nodded. Not agreement, not acceptance, just acknowledgement. "I'm trying," she continued, "and I'm grateful you gave us this." I looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't the same woman who'd demanded the house. There were lines on her face now that hadn't been there before. And something else, something raw, stripped down. "Keep trying," I said softly. She nodded, eyes shimmering. As they packed up to leave, Lucas ran back one last time. He wrapped his arms around my waist. "Grandma?" "Yes, baby." "Do you think we'll have pancakes in heaven?" I laughed gently, tears forming again. "I think heaven smells like pancakes," I said, "and I'll save you a stack." He grinned and ran off. I sat there long after they were gone, watching the sunlight move across the grass, the empty plate, the crayon drawing, the ribbon on the basket. Proof that not all broken things stay broken. Some bend, some survive, and some bloom. 2 days after my visit with Lucas, I received an unexpected envelope from my attorney. No warning call, no subject in the email. Just a manila envelope delivered by courier, thick with weight, not just of paper, but of history. I opened it on my bed, careful not to tear the corners. Inside were 2 things. A copy of the final deed to my old house, now officially recorded as sold and transferred, and a handwritten letter from the current owners. I stared at the letter for a long time before opening it. "Dear Mrs. Lila Jacobs, we're the new owners of the Maple Street house. Our realtor mentioned that you lived here for more than 30 years, and we wanted to reach out and say thank you." The moment we stepped inside, we felt something we hadn't felt in any other house piece. The kitchen still smelled faintly of cinnamon, and the garden, though overgrown, bloomed with the kind of care you can't fake. You left something behind that can't be measured in square footage or marble countertops. You left a soul. We found a few items in the attic that might be yours. An old recipe box, a faded quilt, and a stack of letters tied with blue ribbon. If you'd like them returned, we'd be happy to arrange it. Sincerely, Rachel and Ben Hargrove. I sat there in stunned silence, blinking away a wave of emotion I hadn't expected. I thought I'd severed all ties with that place. I thought letting go meant forgetting. But maybe forgetting isn't the goal. Maybe it's remembering without pain. That evening, I called Rachel. Her voice was warm, easy. "You sound like you know that house," she said. "I do," I said. "Every creak, every sunbeam." If you was another brain. We talked for nearly an hour. I told her about William's rose bushes, the kitchen cabinet that always stuck in the spring, the way the backyard flooded every 3rd July. She told me about the changes they were planning, minor ones. "Nothing too fancy," she promised. "It's perfect the way it is." The next week, a box arrived with my name on it. Inside, my old quilt, stitched with pieces of Lucas's baby clothes, my recipe box flower still dusting the hinges, and the letters, "Not to anyone, from me to me," written in moments of despair, hope, confusion. The oldest dated back to the year William died. I sat on the floor and read them all. They were raw, imperfect, some bitter, some brave, all of them real. By the time I finished, the sun had set. I wrapped the quilt around my shoulders and made tea using my own recipe for cinnamon orange spice. Then I wrote a new letter. Dear House, you sheltered me through love, betrayal, motherhood, and mourning. You listened when I screamed, when I laughed, when I cried. You protected my secrets, and when I was strong enough, you let me go. Thank you for that. I hope you echo now with new voices, new beginnings, new peace. With love, Lila. I didn't mail the letter. I tucked it into the recipe box, next to the folded paper with Lucas's pancake drawing. Some memories are meant to travel with you. Others belong where they began. That night, I slept deeply, without dreams. The kind of sleep that comes when the past no longer holds you hostage. The kind that whispers, you made it through. It was a rainy Tuesday when I returned to the town I once called home. Not to visit the house I'd made my peace with that chapter. No, this trip was for something else. Something smaller, but perhaps more meaningful. The library. The one I used to bring Lucas to on Saturdays. The one where William and I met as young college students. He had dropped his history books in the lobby, and I helped him gather them. We ended up on the same bench that day, and 3 years later, he proposed in the reading room. That building had seen my first kiss, my first heartbreak, my first dreams. Now, it was being shut down. Budget cuts. Something about expansion and redevelopment. It broke my heart in a way I didn't expect. So I did what felt natural. I drove there. I parked on the gravel lot, grabbed my umbrella, and stepped into the gray mist, the scent of wet leaves and paper carrying 1,000 memories. Inside, it was as quiet as I remembered. The shelves were half empty, books being boxed by volunteers. A few patrons wandered silently, as though mourning something sacred. A young librarian approached me with a clipboard. "Are you here to help pack?" "No," I said, smiling. "I'm here to say goodbye." I walked the aisles slowly. Every shelf held echoes. There was the corner where I'd read Anne of Green Gables aloud to Jenna when she was 8, the beanbag chair Lucas used to curl into, legs swinging as he flipped pages, the tiny desk where William once passed me a note that read, "Want to split a chocolate milkshake after Shakespeare?" I lingered at the biography section, then the poetry. In the final aisle, I found something unexpected, a framed photo on the wall, the library's volunteer committee, circa 1984. There I was, 28 years old. Smiling too wide, hair bigger than I remembered, standing next to William, who had one arm draped over my shoulder. A paper heart was pinned to my blouse. Valentine's Day. I touched the glass gently, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like crying. I felt whole. When I turned to leave, the young librarian called out, "Wait, are you Mrs. Lila Jacobs?" "I am." She smiled brightly. "There's a letter for you. It's been here for a while." She handed me a small envelope with my name written in William's handwriting. I blinked. "He dropped it off the week before he passed," she explained softly. "Said to give it to you if you ever came back. We didn't know how to reach you." Hands trembling, I opened it. "My dearest Lila, if you're reading this, I guess I didn't get to say this in person. Or maybe I did, but I wanted to say it again. You were my home, not the house, not the address, you. Don't let grief trick you into thinking you're alone. You are not ever. You carry my love in your spine, your breath, your stubborn sense of justice. Go live the rest of your life with the same fire you've always had. And eat more chocolate. You always hold back. Forever yours, William." I laughed through the tears this time. The librarian looked concerned. "Are you okay?" "I'm perfect," I whispered. That evening, I didn't return to the inn. I drove to the bakery and ordered the biggest chocolate eclair they had. Then I sat by the river, unwrapped it, and watched the town lights blink alive as dusk fell flickering like old memories finally ready to rest. And I whispered to the wind, "I'm still your girl, William." Then I smiled and took the biggest bite. I didn't think anything could surprise me anymore. Not after betrayal, after legal battles, after watching a life's worth of memories disappear behind the door of a moving truck. I thought I had learned the limits of loss, of grief, of forgiveness. But then came the knock. It was early, not long after sunrise. I was still in my robe, tea steeping on the windowsill, when I opened the door of the inn to find Trish standing there, not with a letter or a package or a frown. With Lucas. His backpack hung off one shoulder, his shoes a little muddy, and his face uncertain. Behind him, Jenna stood quietly. "He insisted," she said, offering a fragile smile. "Said he wanted to spend the weekend with you. And she paused. "I wanted that too." I blinked. "You drove all this way?" She nodded. "I'll stay at the motel across town. You two, you have your time." Lucas stepped forward, eyes shining. "Can I stay, Grandma? Just until Sunday?" I knelt to his level, brushing a bit of sleep from his cheek. "You're the best surprise I've had in years," I whispered. "Come in." He stepped over the threshold like he was entering a sacred space, clutching a small bundle of books and art supplies. Jenna handed me his medicine pouch, his favorite snacks, and a printed list of allergies. Her hands were shaking. "Thank you," I said, meaning it. She looked down. "For what?" "For letting him come home." She didn't respond. Just walked away, hands shoved in her jacket, her figure growing smaller in the morning mist. Inside, Lucas explored every corner of my room like it was a treasure map. He opened drawers, peeked into my knitting basket, flipped through photo albums without asking. "This is you and Grandpa?" "Yes," I said, sitting beside him. He had terrible taste in hats. Lucas giggled. "You look happy." "I was," I said softly. We spent the day building a pillow fort, watching old cartoons on my laptop, and baking cinnamon muffins in the inn's tiny shared kitchen. He got flour in his hair. I didn't stop him. At one point, he looked up and said, "Do you ever wish things were like before?" I didn't lie. "Sometimes, but you're not sad now." "No," I said. "Not sad, just grateful." He nodded like that made sense. That night, he curled up under my old quilt, the one stitched from his baby clothes. His breath slowed against my arm. His small hand found mine in the dark. "Grandma?" he whispered. "Yes, baby? Don't go away again." My heart cracked, clean and deep. "I'm right here," I said. "And I always will be." In the stillness, I thought about everything that had happened, the deception, the lawsuits, the grief, the anger, the betrayal. And yet, here he was. Whole, bright, good. Proof that what matters endures. Not because it's perfect, but because it refuses to vanish. In the morning, Lucas ran outside to feed the birds with Trish. I stood by the window, holding my tea, watching him laugh his joy, unburdened by the history that brought him to me. Later, I sat at my desk and pulled out a fresh piece of stationery. "Dear Jenna, thank you for trusting me with him. Thank you for letting love be louder than pride. This weekend doesn't erase the past, but it reminds me that even broken families can write new stories. One page at a time. Love. Mom." I folded it and placed it in an envelope I'd give her tomorrow. Not as closure, but as a key. Sunday morning came with the quiet hush of fog. Lucas was still asleep, curled up like a comma beneath my quilt, soft breaths fluttering the edge of the pillow. I sat beside him, watching his chest rise and fall, committing this piece to memory. The weekend had been a miracle, not loud or dramatic, but slow, healing, real. Later, after breakfast and a final walk by the lake, Jenna returned to pick him up. She stayed in the car at first, watching from the window. I saw her hesitate, fingers tapping the steering wheel, as if unsure whether to stay or disappear. I waved her over. She stepped out, wrapped in a soft gray cardigan, eyes tired but clearer than I'd seen in years. "He had a good time," I said. She smiled, tentative. "He hasn't stopped talking about it." We stood there, just the two of us, as Lucas gathered his things inside. "I wrote you something," I said, handing her the letter I'd written the day before. She didn't open it. Instead, she looked at me and asked, "Would you read it to me?" I blinked. "You sure?" She nodded. "I want to hear it from you, not paper." So I read, each word, slowly, clearly. My voice didn't shake this time. And when I was done, she didn't speak. She just stepped forward, and for the first time in years, she hugged me. A real hug. Not performative. Not out of guilt. But one woman saying to another, "I see you now. I'm sorry. I want to begin again." "I don't expect everything to be okay," she whispered. "It never is," I replied. "But it can be better." She pulled away, eyes wet. "Will you visit him?" "I'll do more than that," I said. "I'll write, I'll call, I'll be present. No more vanishing." She nodded. Lucas came out then, waving a muffin in one hand and a drawing in the other. Wait, he said. I made something for your room. He handed me a picture of the inn, the quilt, and 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, holding hands by the lake. Above them, in wobbly block letters, "Home is where you are." My throat closed. I knelt, hugging him tight. "This is going on the wall, front and center," he beamed. When they left, I stood by the gravel path long after the car had gone, feeling the wind wrap around me like a shawl. Inside, I framed the drawing. I pinned it above my writing desk, next to a small note I'd found tucked inside William's old books, just days before. "You don't have to go back, just forward. That's where I'll meet you," I whispered aloud. "I'm here now." Later that night, I pulled out my journal and began the final entry of this chapter in my life. There was a time I thought I had nothing left. No home, no family, no justice, no voice. But I was wrong. I had myself. And that was the beginning of everything. I signed it with my full name. Leila Margaret Jacobs. Widow. Mother. Grandmother. Survivor. And maybe, just maybe, a storyteller. Lila's journey teaches us that even in the aftermath of betrayal, loss, and heartbreak, healing is possible not through revenge or forgetting, but through courage, boundaries, and self-respect. She reminds us that home is not a house, but the people and principles we choose to carry forward. And sometimes, justice doesn't roar, it whispers, through forgiveness, quiet strength, and the decision to keep living with love, even after everything.